I love our peanut gallery, which they lovingly call themselves. Um, yeah, we've got a roll call. Oh man, this is gonna be a good one.
Yeah. Hi
So,
guys.
hello, another week, episode
Yeah.
14. Been doing this 14 weeks. It's
Yeah.
pretty nuts.
I think
Like,
we've kind of let go of the whole final episode
yeah,
joke that we
I
were doing for a while. It got
it could
old,
only last
you
so
know.
long. Could only last so
Yeah.
long. So yeah, here we are. I think we really can't pretend that we have a surprise guest. I think a lot of people are excited. So I don't think we can do our usual shtick of a big reveal, but
Right.
let's go ahead and bring him in. So here we
Yeah.
go. It's Matt.
There he is.
Matt
Hey
Miesnieks.
Matt.
Hello.
Oh, you know
Hey.
what? I forgot to get you to spell check all your names. So if you see
Yeah,
something,
good.
okay,
Good
good.
guess. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
actually very
guessed right.
easy to spell. It's a little scary to read the first time you read it, but
And
it it's easy.
Actually,
I
I'd really
was
like to know, Matt, how do you pronounce your last name?
Mm.
I pronounce it Miesnieks, but it's a Latvian name, and if you're a Latvian person, you'd probably pronounce it more like Miesnieks.
Uh,
Ah, okay.
Uh,
that sounds too much like Mucinex. Like we wouldn't say that. I like Miesniks. I like how
yeah,
you said. Well, I pronounce it this way. So you
yeah. This
you
is what I
you
grew
leave
up
it
with in
open.
Australia. Yeah. I've
So
had
welcome.
every pronunciation you could imagine. Thank you.
Man, I mean, so sometimes we like to talk about how we know each other. So I was actually thinking about it. I think the earliest contact we had was when I was still at Magic Leap. I think we had a couple calls. I
Yeah.
think I think we might have been trying to recruit you even. I don't remember the context, but then that was kind of casual. And then I think the more time we spent together was actually when you were part of Super Ventures. Is that how you remember it?
Yeah. That was it. It was around it was kind of this Magic Leap was trying to recruit me. You were in town. You were just sort of talking generally about what was going on at Magic Leap. You're also sort of floating these ideas about what you had, what you might want to do after Magic Leap. And I was, helping out at Super Ventures and sort of also thinking about, ideas on the side. So
Yeah,
yeah, and then that was before Torch, before 6D, before all that
yeah,
stuff even was really anything.
yeah. And Spencer, isn't your first time meeting Matt, is it?
I have never met Matt.
Oh my God,
This
I
is
had
my
no
very,
idea.
yeah.
I should have introduced you guys earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
and
for I told Matt he's so used to telling his whole backstory. So I want to talk about more fun stuff. Not that your backstory is not fun, but I mean you have been in this industry of augmented reality for a very long time, and I'm going to share it in the show notes. To me, the thing I like the most is that 2013 interview you did with Scoble when you had Deco,
yeah.
and I like I said I'll share it in the show notes. But the thing to me about that interview is, first of all, you had fully working multiplayer AR on an old ass iPad in
Yep,
2013. You were
yep,
doing meshing,
yep,
and you could just
and
hear.
tracking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is pre AR kit, right? And you could hear in your in
Oh
your
yeah,
in your pitch, like you could hear the DNA of what became 6D. Like, I mean,
totally.
this was not some problem that you decided to work on for 6D. You've been basically
No,
focused on this for longer than most.
10 years. Yeah, 10 years. Even at Leia before Deco, we were sort of became aware of the same problem and this need for the device to have a 3D understanding of the real world that needed to be persistent and needed to be shared for AR to be what AR needs to be. And yeah, and back then, Leia, there was no, 6DoF tracking didn't exist, let alone meshing or anything like that. So Deco was trying to solve all those problems, and that was kind of what what we're talking about on that 2013 interview. And he did too much with too little, and I think 6D was really a case of just picking one slice of the problem we're trying to solve at Deco and building a company around just that problem. But it was, I saw some of my old pitch decks, from the Deco days, and there were like 3 or 4 slides that it was like I could have cut and pasted into my 6D deck. It was literally same words, same concept, same vision. Everything was there, the same thing.
Yeah, So and I want to get into like all kinds of parts about your journey, but we like to kind of spread it out across the time. Spencer, we didn't really talk about. We did have a couple of notes of news things. Did you want to get into them at all now, or do you want to?
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, we can talk about, I mean, well, here's the thing: is that there is an elephant.
Oh man!
In the room,
in the palm of your hand, maybe.
There's an elephant in the room, and we should probably at least say something about that, because kind of a big part of our lives, and a lot of people who either watch this or are tangentially connected to us. I mean, Magic Leap just laid off 1,000 people.
Yeah, I mean, it happened just before our last show, and we kind of, we acknowledged it. I think, I mean, obviously it's tough. There's a lot of people all of a sudden in this industry looking for work at a really bad time to be looking for work, especially if you have to relocate out of Florida. And I think we will continue to talk about it, because I also think the situation is still unfolding. Yes, they laid off 1,000 people, but there's still questions about what's going to happen next. Are they going to find funding? Are they going to find acquirers? Is there going to be more layoffs? We don't know.
Right.
So I think we will continue to talk about it. And I think we would like to have people. One thing Spencer and I definitely want to do is there's a lot of really smart, creative people that you've probably never heard of behind the scenes that were there for the entire time that we were there up until this. And I would love to give them some attention and time and kind of and show them off. But I think they probably also need some time to heal and process what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't, Matt, what was your take on it? Like, do you have like,
yeah, well, I mean, I'm like on the outside, so I've just got friends there, but looking at it, it's definitely, I think, the right decision for. I mean, like if you look at Magic Leap's board, the sort of situation that the board were in, and the sort of decisions they have to make. The market's going to be, it was tough, and with this COVID, it's just gotten even tougher. And for any company to really, have a chance of getting through this type of market, you have to focus. And widely renowned for trying to boil the ocean, to do everything. And so I think it was pretty tough speculating that it must have been a tough call to say, we went out and we founded this company as a hardware company. Hardware is what we've invested all this money in. That's what our investors signed up to. So we're going to double down on our hardware. And the only real, revenue opportunity in AR right now is either you get lucky with some sort of consumer hit product like an Instagram face filter, or you focus on enterprise. And so I think it was just more one of those situations like you just had no choice.
Yeah.
That was the thing. And all the stuff that I think everyone believed in and wants to do and know is going to happen, the Magicverse, all the amazing experiences and developer relations and all this sort of stuff. It just must have been very difficult to sort of say that that's secondary to these other, hardware and enterprises is what we need to head on.
Paul said something to me. I don't know who you were talking to, Paul, but about the people who just went through 3, 4, 5, 6 years of Magic Leap. Those are the people who are going to now go out and make massive change in this industry. Those are, I mean, they will be some of the people, but there are a lot of people who just got laid off from Magic Leap who have all of this industry knowledge, all of this kind of like AR DNA that they're going to be able to make the next thing. And we don't know what that next thing is, but I mean, Pedro Arroyo and all of the people who were in the interaction lab and the people who were in content, those folks are going to take all of that information Naomi, Augustine, all of those folks are going to take that information and they're going to like walk out into a million different places and kind of seed the universe with
Well, and
that
knowledge.
They're
gonna what I was saying was, and I can't take full credit for this. This came out of a conversation with a friend yesterday, but the thought is that there are very large, like every major computing company is investing massive dollars into some sort of whether it's glasses or foundational tech or whatever. Every company has some large investment going on as a long-term strategy, and they can wait for the market to develop. So that's why it's not all just available to us now. But what they do bring that, like, I think even Matt was alluding to, that Magically probably needed sooner than later, which is focus around a use case or focus around a specific, type of thing. So yeah, they've basically got to live in the future, as we say, for years, and now a lot of them are going to get to go to a company that has tons of resources, but they have focus, and they're saying, no, we've now seen how that's played out when you can't really communicate, And another thing I want to correct, so I've been thinking a lot. So I often say, like, the Magic Leap headset is it's been out for 2 years now publicly. It's about to be 2 years. It's still the most capable headset feature-wise, because I think what I used to say not that long ago was it's the best headset on the market. And as a product-oriented person, I'm now correcting myself, because if it were the best product on the market, they wouldn't be having issues. So what it really is, it's the most capable. Like it has the most features and functionality. Like, its closest competitor is HoloLens 2, which has a couple of edges on a couple of things, but it doesn't have nearly the capability. Like Matt said, boil the ocean. Like they've considered a lot of things. Unfortunately, there's not a product market fit, which kills a ton of companies, right? So I was gonna kind of bring it back to your background. Like I said, I didn't want to have you chronologically take us through your entire career, but someone did ask in the chat, like, what is Deco? And just for those that don't know, it's spelled DEKKO. But that wasn't even your first AR. I mean, it was LayAR before that. Was it Samsung before that?
No. Samsung was after Deco, but this is like such a great. Like in my experience, going back to the Magic Leap, the people laid off. Deco failed. We were working on all, but just too early and didn't have enough focus, and the company just failed. It was an incredibly painful experience. But literally exactly what we learned at Deco, and it takes a couple of years to learn this stuff in this space, was literally what we did to build 6D, and so I think there's going to be a lot of people, at Magic Leap or ex-Magic Leap people that are, they know that what they're working on is needed, and it is a real thing that's worth building. And so now, whatever, it might take a year or two before the market kind of gets there, but that experience that people have built up is actually going to pay, or hopefully, it pays off, because it definitely did for me. And one of the not hard decisions, one of the things I had to realize with 6D is don't jump out into the future. I've learned these lessons already in the last company that didn't work, and now I just need to apply them at this point. I was working in mobile, spent a fair bit of time with a company called OpenWave, who invented the mobile phone browser, invented WAP, back in the mid-2000s in Asia. And I was thinking what comes after the phone, and seeing how interactions were changing, and that was what led me to move my family to Amsterdam to join a startup in 2009 called Layer, who were the first GPS-based AR company. And from there, problems I thought needed to be solved led me to start Deco. And then Deco failed. I went to Samsung, worked on the same problems a bit more, and then sort of got frustrated at Samsung and eventually left and sort of started working with Super Ventures and Ori and Tom and the team there, while sort of sniffing around for what startup to start.
I actually have two questions.
No, to succeed.
Sorry. I actually have two questions related to that. Like, so first of all, having kind of you've now been through multiple iterations in the same problem space, like, and I know that a lot of times when you're doing that, I mean, we still do it to this day. You're like, well, I see what's holding it back. I see, like, and I can imagine back in the day, it was like, well, we need lower level OS support for AR tracking. We're never going to be able to build like a third party AR tracker that's going to be as good as somebody that's closer to the hardware. And then, so we got AR Core and AR Kit, right? And, Tango and other stuff. And then we got like, and then, so then that happened. So then you're like, okay, well, but we need like, persistence and more world awareness. And then like you get a little bit closer. So like, I guess the question is like having, if you look back to like 10 years ago and you think about what are the big missing pieces that have now materialized between, that 10-year span, like what do you think is still missing and what are you surprised wasn't as impactful as you thought it would be?
I mean, there's so much still missing. I keep, like, this whole time I've been in AR, I keep drawing from what I learned in mobile, because I was there from when WAP was invented through to the iPhone, and that was like a 7-8 year period. And I think what AR is, I guess one of the good things about AR in the last couple of years is that a lot of people now understand what's needed. They understand the whole stack, and they, everyone from Magic Leap, HoloLens, Apple, Facebook, all Snap, all these companies have now got, big teams of people that really understand that you need from the lowest level, sensors right through to the algorithms and tracking and perception. I think that all of that stuff just needs to be, better, improved. I think the hardware form factor is still a massive unsolved problem. And I think that the first viable, glasses that we wear are not going to have a Magic Leap or HoloLens feature set. They're going to be more like a Snap Spectacles type feature set, something very cut down, but they're going to look good. So I still think there's like so much just going on that we need to get to the point where you can point to like 3 or 4 devices and go, well, HoloLens has got great tracking and Magic Leap's got, this great developer API and Snap's got fashion and Apple, like the integration with the AirPods and the watch and all this stuff, but no one's put it all together yet. All the pieces are there, but someone just needs to put it all together. And we're not there. Like the smartphone business is like that, 2005, 2006. You could, Apple definitely has all the pieces. It's what they're best at. So I still think we've got a couple of years easy before, people like us are like looking around going, why hasn't someone taken, HoloLens tracking and this from here and this from here and this from here and like turned it into a single product yet? Once we get to that point and like us insiders are kind of feeling frustrated that no one's done it, then we'll know it's close.
Can I say what I foresee? And I don't know if I'm going to be right or not, but
give us your futurist predictions.
Here's my futurist prediction. I wear this, right? I wear these things, right? And I have my phone within Bluetooth range all the time. So all of those have processors on them. All of them have computing ability, and all of them have batteries. So why not have the glasses require that you have these? I mean, that's a very Apple thing.
Yeah.
I've got this for spatial audio. I've got this for haptics. I've got this for my visual, and then I've got my phone for compute. And they all just sit on top of it.
I've literally heard Matt say exactly that.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. For the last since the Superventures days, I called it a constellation. It'll be a constellation.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
and it works because you can then just you take your glasses off and you're still connected. It's just slightly degraded experience.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just audio. I definitely, I become more and more convinced that product constellation is going to be more fashionable. Like we're going to want these like everyone has like multiple pairs. Like I've got my sunglasses I wear cycling. I've got sunglasses I wear when I'm driving. I've got these things now for reading. Everyone has like 3 or 4 pairs, and you don't want to have like a $2,000 pair. You want like a $200 pair, and you want to upgrade them, as you go. So.
Right.
Yeah.
It also it also amortizes the cost, right? Because to me, the biggest downfall of Magic Leap adoption, in my opinion, was the cost factor. And if I said, well, you could have the Magic Leap device for $500 less if it didn't have eye tracking, most people would probably be like, okay. Like you could probably it is interesting
with
this
that,
incremental
Paul,
thing.
is that eye tracking was part of the whole experience. Like because you had eye tracking, you had the ability to suspend disbelief just that much
well,
more.
I mean, in the case of Magic Leap, eye tracking drove the display primarily, and it is a mode of interaction. But I'm saying like this idea of like a constellation of devices actually makes it where you could mix and match what you can afford, and like
I don't need haptic.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go right.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool idea. We have a lot of great chat stuff going on, and like I love. There's a lot of positivity around what we were talking about with the Magic Leap thing, and I actually think it. Our mutual friend Amy Lemire, who I love, is in the chat, and like she made a point too, like Matt, what you're saying around like people that grow more knowledgeable can look at the ecosystem and start to piece together what's actually going to be a compelling product and product experience. And she was saying, like, as a part of the Magic Leap shakeout, we were saying that a lot of people are going to go to big, well-resourced companies and be able to be impactful. But the other piece of this is probably out of that 1,000 people, there's going to be some new companies that form out of it they're standing on the shoulders of the past 5 years of work, all the investment that Magic Leap's made, which actually related to a comment someone made in the chat, which was also going to be similar to my follow-up question, because you briefly touched on you went into super ventures, and so and that's where we really started to spend a lot of time together. Was you went from being an entrepreneur, a product operator, to a VC, where you're investing. And so I was just curious in general, like how was that experience for you, not necessarily building a company, but hearing about other people build companies and making decisions about investing in them. And then that kind of related to Eric's question, which is like, when should people not take venture capital money, which is a big topic. Like how do you reflect on your experience there?
Yeah, I guess the first thing is, we're at Super Ventures. I wouldn't say we're real VCs. It was like pre-seed, writing very small checks. The more I've sort of got to understand that side of the industry, we're barely angel investors more than institutional investors. So, but as an entrepreneur, it was incredibly valuable, because you just seeing so many pictures and thinking about it, with through that lens. My biggest takeaway was entrepreneurs they just want to talk about their product. It's all it is. Like you'll have like 100% of your time, and I'll talk about the product 80% of the time, and often. And as an investor, you realize that's like the least of that should be like 20% of the time. What you really should be talking about is the market you're going after and the team that you're building. And that was, and then some understanding of like how why you're raising this amount of money and what you're going to achieve with that amount of money. Like what's the investor buying? What results is the investor buying with their check? And just learning how to think about your company, like as a founder, through an investor lens was just like really, really valuable lesson for me to learn. And it's just helped me immeasurably in how I thought about 6D. I mean, and then
I was going to say that you gave some advice to me in the early days, either before we really started Torch or in the early days of Torch. And I only ever heard it from you, so I assumed this was your original thought as far as I'm concerned. But you said think about what's the smallest market you can totally dominate. What's the smallest market you can own? Instead of like the temptation is to think about how big is the market that I'm going after, because we always talk about total addressable market and all those things. And it was a great way to phrase like, okay, sure, everybody's idea has huge potential, but like what really matters is that you demonstrate that you can focus on a market and really dominating a small market is way more valuable than just chucking an attempt out into an empty market. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely didn't make that up. I can't remember where I heard it, but I do remember hearing it somewhere.
You can take credit for it as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Yes.
but it's still, like we did, we have struggled with that at Torch. I mean, because like the other problem is that we're also in an emerging market. And so to really quantify any market from that angle is difficult, and I think a lot of founders struggle with that. But I have to imagine like you're an entrepreneur, you like to work on things, you're a problem solver. So like when you hear these pitches, like were there ever times where you're just like, oh, these guys are their own worst enemy, and I really wish I could just tell them how they was it
like the vast majority? Yes. Yeah, that was the other surprising thing, just how bad so many pictures were, like so obviously bad. And the founders don't see it. They're quite enamored with their vision. And it's hard to I don't know what a real vision is, like someone must think, because they would see like thousands more pictures than we would have seen, and in all different sectors. And so many of them were just so obviously bad.
So I wanted to shift gears a little bit, because it did remind me, like during your time at Super Ventures, your partner Ori, right? He's credited with coining the term AR cloud, which was a heavily batted around term, even 2 years ago. And 6D, squarely was like top of the heap as far as like, if you talked about AR cloud, give me an example of an AR cloud company. Well, there's 6D. And then I remember at AWE, it must have been 2 years ago, that you were on a panel and you were just like what, you I think everybody expected you to talk breathlessly about AR cloud and you were opinionated on it, as you should be, right? Like, so how has that panned out? I haven't heard that term in a little while, actually. And what happened? Like, what do you think?
Oh, I think it won. Like so I mean, the way the term came up was we were talking, Ori and Tom and I about 6D really, and the opportunity. We hadn't, no one had heard of the company then. We hadn't done anything with it, but it was this real recognition that for AR to live up to its potential, we needed this model of the world. It was, you couldn't store a model like that on your phone. It had to live in between the phone. And it was like something that was unique to AR. It wasn't just the cloud, the way web stuff, but it was very, specific and unique to AR. And saying that was what 6D was solving. And Ori sort of in that conversation said, "Oh, it's like an AR cloud." And we're like, "Yeah, I guess that's exactly what this company is going to be doing." And so we both wrote our blog posts, and they came out pretty simultaneously, sort of trying to articulate this idea, and the term caught on. Most people attach the term to content, rather than the actual SLAM type perception infrastructure for things. But we didn't care.
So really quickly, because there are a lot of art dorks on this, as well as code dorks. Can you give us a quick explanation of what, like your definition of AR cloud is?
Yeah,
just so
well,
we can
I
like
didn't
we can
really.
all.
Yeah, I didn't really. Everyone sort of came up with their own definition. I didn't care that much. I thought it was a media or something. But for me, it was really just a term to describe what 6D was doing. It wasn't the other way around. Like 6D wasn't an AR cloud. The AR cloud was a descriptor of 6D. So
Right.
for us, it was. The reason 6D existed was that to do things like occlusion and persistence and for semantic understanding of the world, you needed this, real-time 3D understanding of the world, like a map or, like labeling and segmenting. And all that stuff really needed to happen, or at least needed to be stored in the cloud. And the content itself, as long as it had coordinates that mapped to this AR layer, the content could just sit in the cloud, like the traditional web cloud, as just a traditional piece of.
And by content, you mean the mesh of the room or the mesh of
No,
the
no
area?
content. Right. I mean, like the assets, like the
experience.
The experience.
The elements of the experience.
The animated characters
walking around, right? Yeah.
Your high score, your login name, the state of those assets.
Right.
And the stuff that happened in AR was like, the mesh, and obviously the mesh has multiple layers of textures and whatever, segmentation things. But there's the SLAM layer, which is all the 3D feature points, and some networking to let all that stuff talk to each other. So then there was like whatever semantic understanding you applied on top of that, and some of that ran locally on the phone, some might run in the cloud because it's not real time. But it was really.
So right now, there is not a commercially available application where I can, in AR, go over to Paul's house, draw a picture on his front lawn, and send him a
Don't you
a
draw
link.
a picture in my front lawn.
I will draw a picture in your front lawn, my friend.
All right.
And I cannot do that right now with the current. Right. So and that is AR Cloud. That is understanding the GPS coordinates, understanding the geometry at that GPS coordinate, and understanding where the content was placed. Yeah. Right. So that's
exactly what we were setting out to solve with 6D. And one of the when you said, why isn't this term used anymore? We definitely found 12, 18 months ago that every major platform, I knew them all, they all had their own, they're like bought in completely to this concept that, Ori and I started articulating. And, Magic Leap called it the Magic Verse, and HoloLens went from being a Connect product to an Azure product, and Google launched their cloud, and everyone sort of moved to this realization, like, oh my God, this AR stuff isn't just about the device; it's the cloud stuff that's valuable. And so when we, we're going through the M&A process for 6D, obviously we talked to all these companies, and we got at least a sense of what they're really up to right now, and it's done like that. There's no argument anymore. Like all of them are plowing. They got teams now of tens to hundreds of people purely building 3D SLAM maps of the world, for perception and understanding of the 3D world. So I think the reason it's not being talked about is that there really isn't startup opportunity in that space today. And the startups that were AR cloud, throwing that term around, are sort of realized that, oh, hang on, we were actually content companies anyway.
Right.
We were just
so this
AR MMO game, in cloud.
So the ability to create what I just talked about is actually more online with a Google, Apple, Microsoft level of investment, and like you can't do that as a startup. This is something.
Well, and so like I was gonna say, we called it in past episodes persistence, right? This idea of I can persistently place content, and like if you really think about it from a business perspective and a realistic perspective, like in Spencer's example, he's basically saying, why can't I go ahead and put in somebody besides my front yard content for them
It
to.
was going to be a really nice picture. It was going to be a
All
happy
right,
picture that
as
I
long
was
as
going
it
to
wasn't
draw.
like a poop emoji or something. But so like, the question is, we know how to solve that problem, if not primitively, like it's possible. So why aren't we seeing more of it? And I think like the top level answer is, well, okay, who's going to build that app where I leave, artwork in a location for someone else to find, and what is their business model? And then on top of that, they're going to use, let's say, 6D's technology. Where's 6D's business model in that? You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be probably a small team, and they're not going to want to pay 6D a ton of money for that. And
Oh
so,
my God! Wait, no, no! I walk past the Chinese restaurant with my phone, and I can pick up coupons because I'm there.
oh man, the coupon example.
Well,
So yeah,
whatever.
but
we
Okay.
can, we can talk to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can talk to that because it's firstly it's still a really hard technical problem to do that at scale, like
Mm-hmm.
just straight up technology. Things like Google's VPS, Snap have their what do they call them?
Yeah,
Location
location
filters, on
lenses.
Big
Yep.
Ben and the Eiffel Tower and stuff like that. We're seeing it come like bottom up with like Apple's, world maps that they let you, I forget what they call them, ARKit maps that let you localize in a small
World
space.
map. Yeah.
Microsoft has got their cloud anchors or spatial anchors,
Azure
I think,
spatial anchors.
sort of trying to solve it.
Yeah.
Yep. And all of that stuff's kind of, like the capabilities are kind of expanding, but they haven't all like intersected yet. But when they do, then what you describe will be possible. One of the, it's a good lead into Niantic and 6D, and one of the things that I think excited us about Niantic as a home for the company was no other company, like not Apple, not Google, not Snap, a community of like a big community of users who are out there actually moving around in the world, pointing their phones at things that matter to them, not like Big Ben or the Eiffel Tower, but just whatever it is in your neighborhood. And they've got a business model around it based on Pokestops. And the more precisely you can place a Pokestop outside the front door of a business, the more Niantic can charge for those. So all of those things are kind of very reinforcing, and no other company has that today. And I think Niantic's got that potential to, do like almost user-generated social graph of AR social graph of like places that people are actually interested in, not just the main places, the main points of interest that the product manager thinks.
And you totally answered a question I was going to ask from Patrick McCrory in the chat around how how Niantic's going to push forward since they now have access to this technology. I think the other thing I wanted to get at was, we've only ever talked about these kind of consumer-facing use cases for persistent AR, which, basically my premise is those will come when there's enough users, which is essentially what you're saying. So, like, you either have a company that has a bunch of active users like Niantic, but I've always been really impressed by talking to you and a couple of other people specifically in this space, because you get to see some really compelling enterprise use cases. And so, like, everybody, we can talk all day long about the shared character in the room or the leaving a piece of graffiti, but there's actually really cool, like, it'd be great to the extent that you could talk about it even generically, like the types of things people can do with this data, like beyond just like leaving a virtual object for someone to find. Like, there's a lot of crazy stuff once you have a scene understanding and a scene representation and the ability to work with content within it. So it'd be great to hear like just some top level, use cases.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things we kind of clued up to pretty quick is when just a consumer or an employee or something, you don't need to be a specialist, you can just wave a device around, a sort of off-the-shelf device, and get a reasonably photorealistic 3D model of a space out of that. The what happened is, especially when that 3D model can then be relocalized against in AR, and that means you can put a bit of content into the 3D model, and if you go to the real world and turn your phone on, you'll see that same bit of content in the real world that matches the 3D model. That was something that, you know, we were definitely probably the first to do it in like just on a phone, you know. And that meant that lots of enterprise use cases became available, and the distinction between like AR and VR started to get kind of blurry, you know, like almost non-existent, in that you know, what was virtual content in a virtual space that you looked at through a VR headset versus virtual content in the same real space that you looked at through an AR headset. And the only real difference was, were you present in that physical space, or were you remote, you know, virtually in that space? And so that potential to kind of, you know, like geographically shift locations around or even time shift them, started to mean that, you know, lots of enterprise use cases around how do you have a spatial understanding, like from a remote location, like how can sit in a room and be aware of what's going on in an oil refinery, where everybody was in that refinery. You've got to
right.
You end up having,
and not only where people are in the oil refinery, but like where the problem spots are. This is one of the use cases that Paul and I did with a company right after I left Magic Leap, where you have a fighter jet or a helicopter or whatever, and it has sensors all over it that can tell you that there is a problem at that location on the aircraft. And so you go to that place, you have a world sense of where you are, and then then it will tell you what tools you need and what panel you need to open and how to open it and how to replace the piece. I mean, this is something that everyone has talked about with AR. And the only way to do it right now is by having a freaking QR code on the side of your helicopter.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, exactly.
you know, like we need that ability to sense actually what's happening in the world and really what's there, and then enact and display upon that stuff. You know.
Yes, totally. We saw the same with with obviously the work we were doing with Airbnb. You know, on a semi-consumer level, in that when you have this 3D model of your home, Airbnb weren't interested in using that model like Matterport did for marketing purposes. They were using it for data. They wanted to get, is this house ADA compliant? You know, what's the bench heights? What the widths of the doors? Are there steps inside the place? Then it was like, how do we use that model now for insurance? And how do we do like an inventory of all the items in the home to do an automatic, check for an insurance claim? How do we upsell the property with a quick makeover?
we're getting into the creepy zone there now too, though, where they're like checking to make sure that you actually do have a 65-inch TV, right.
I mean, so that is the fascinating part of this. This space, this inevitably happens. I'm sure Matt's had it many times over. Like, inevitably,
the privacy issue.
You get into ownership and privacy of virtual space, right? And it's super interesting. And there is no, the answer is there is no answer, right?
Right.
Well, the answer's, my take on it is the answer's subtle and shades of gray and slices of, this layer of the cake is super sensitive and should never be public, and this layer of the cake, no one should care about that can be public, who cares? But everyone just looks at
what layer is that? What layer is the sensitive one? That's what because it's all the same thing. It's you guys are all seeing the inside of my house right now.
Yes,
but I minimized your views so we couldn't measure it.
I think we're going to have to just stick to very simplistic, definitions of some of this stuff until we start to understand, the real implication of different types of spatial data. And so,
I think.
One last thing, I guess I want to touch on. This is straight speculation that we're talking about before we were engaged with Niantic. So I want to be clear about that. But we're talking with someone who had very deep connections at Epic, and speculating about the potential of sort of doing a mashup of a Pokemon Go style game that's real world and running around with a Fortnite style game, but the virtual world in Fortnite is the real world in Pokemon Go. And you start to be able to say, look, here's my neighborhood around my house in a virtual model, and I can run around actually my house, and you can see me in the game inside that house, and you start to sort of be able to create whole new concepts of entertainment that are a mix of like VR and AR and just traditional 3D gaming. So those type of use cases, I don't think anyone's explored or experimented with yet. So there's a bunch of potential there.
Well, Niantic did themselves with what was the name of the game, Paul?
It's either Pokemon Go or Harry Potter.
No,
Ingress. Oh, Ingress. Yeah.
Ingress. Right, because Ingress was that, and I've always thought that, good Lord, why doesn't someone in Matt's company like the folks who made Ingress, and and because now I was just playing around with the 2020 LiDAR iPad, and the distance on that thing is crazy. It's like 15, 20 feet, and so I if you are able to do the same thing. Because what I understood about Niantic's thing with Google with Ingress was that they actually one of the things that happened with that was that they built the game so that people would walk around their neighborhoods and find the ped paths, the pedestrian walkways that didn't show up on Google Maps, and so Google could start to understand where people naturally went. In their little hometowns and stuff, and I'm sure that all that data is super,
well,
excellent. Yeah, it's a huge asset that I think is underappreciated in the AR community, and something that we saw when we were talking to Niantic. Facebook tries to get people to go and map parts of the world. It's going to be dodgy, but. Dodgy from a manipulation influence point of view, but Niantic has this community of people that love it. They want to contribute to the game. They're invested emotionally in these experiences, and for them it's not like, oh, I'm helping feed Facebook's algorithm. They're like, no, I'm making my Pokemon world richer.
It's this weird double-edged sword where we're like, oh my God, I can see, like. My neighbor's house occludes that thing that's beyond it. And oh my God, that's so cool. And my neighbor's house is now in a database.
Right. Well,
from my backyard.
Well, so I know Ross Finman at Niantic has said this. I'm pretty sure he said it publicly before. I'm pretty sure. Like basically, like if you have let's just don't say he said it. But the truth is, if they're building a map of the world and there's a hole in the map, like, oh, we don't have any data there, with Pokemon Go they can literally drive people to places because they play the game. Like they can, I mean, you can
put a Pikachu right there.
Yes.
Right,
yeah. I mean, but I mean, it's I'm not saying it's evil. I'm just saying like, but yeah, like to your point, but we have those trade-offs outside of, I mean, like, the to take it to an old school version, like I'd love to be able to share, what I had for lunch with my friends and family, the old school Instagram use case. And like, well, the trade-off for that is you're taking a picture, you're tagging its location, other people can see it. Like you have super coarse controls over who can and can't see it. They can do whatever they want with the data on the platform side. I mean, so we're not new to the trade-off of, in exchange for this experience, I have to give up something.
Yeah. Just on that one point, Matt, I don't know if you've seen Paul's Untapped feed,
yes.
but it's pretty impressive.
I've noticed we've got a lot of my New Zealand buddies in the chat. I'm really happy to see them. A bunch of Magic Leap Weta people, and
I saw Jimmy in there.
Yeah, there's a few, and they've smuggled some beers for me across water, the oceans. I appreciate that.
Steintiger. Yeah.
Actually, I was gonna, it's such a Portland thing to do to try to make any conversation about Portland, but Matt, like the other times I've hung out with Matt was he came up to Portland and to buy bicycles. so like
nice.
Yeah, so it's
very Portland thing to do.
Yeah, and we hung out at a bicycle beer bar actually.
Yeah.
So we always
I miss riding my bicycle, you guys.
I miss going to bars.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, the whole Weta crew is basically here. I see it's the old joke is the romper room magic mirror. I see Jimmy and Joe and Tim and Brian. Those guys. By the way, there's a lot of really talented XR people in New Zealand. Basically, a lot of the people in the chat right now built Dr. G invaders and boosters. In my opinion, my humble opinion, the highest quality game content you can get on Magic Leap has come from this group. Daniel's here. Oh my gosh, it's incredible.
Oh, I gotta say, the boosters team, being able to crash a rocket into Paul's head in his basement was one of the high points of my life.
Well,
it was amazing.
To bring it back, I mean, all that is possible thanks to meshing and
exactly.
and scene understanding.
Physics occlusion. Yeah.
I was trying to make sure we cover. Like, I think Spencer.
Matt, you're kind of the Paul DeBevec of environmental messing.
Who's the Paul DeBevec?
Very obscure.
Paul DeBevec is a researcher, science PhD guy down at UCLA, or actually I don't know where he is now, but he's all over the place. But he's basically one of the guys who brought us photogrammetry and volumetric capture. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So, yeah, I definitely shouldn't. No, I'm not the researcher. So that would
right.
This is.
Co-founder. I'm just a guy that can sort of understand what the researchers say and explain it in words that regular people understand.
Which is not which they usually need a lot of help with.
They do a little bit.
I really wanted to call back to Todd had a question in the chat about like, are there some AR academic researchers and groups that you are really excited about that you'd recommend people check out their work or follow?
I mean, it's the same groups that have been there forever. I mean, the reason...
forever to you, Victor, because you're an industry veteran.
I was going to say, but nearly every major lab is kind of affiliated with one of the big platforms now in one way or another. I mean, I worked with Victor, my 6D co-founder. He was at the Oxford University Active Vision Lab. I mean, that lab literally invented SLAM on phones, and they've been doing SLAM for 40 years. And so
whoa, 40?
Yeah.
40 years?
Yeah. David Murray, who started that lab, was like, I don't know, like in the 70s or earlier maybe. And that was like, NASA type SLAM research for the British space agencies and things. And so then I think George Klein was the first guy to put it on a phone with PTAM in 2006 or 7 or something, or 8. And George then went on to run the HoloLens perception team and sort of developed all the 6-dot tracking for HoloLens with a few other people. But yeah, there's, that team, the Andy Davidson's team at Imperial College, there's teams at Washington University.
Is HitLab?
They're the big ones.
Is HitLab still a thing?
Yeah, Mark Billinghurst is doing something. They weren't doing a lot of the core like SLAM type stuff, but they were like really pushing the limits of like interaction and person to person, AR interactions and how all that.
What would be super helpful is if we could, if after the show we could get a kind of a list of the links, a link list from
you. Follow. Yeah.
Look who I follow. Just your Twitter handles here in the screen. I think I want to make sure we got Spencer. You actually had some questions. I don't know if we covered them all. I think we covered how important is knowing where the 3D geometry is around a user.
Well,
Um,
I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I also wanted to give a shout out to the guys at Scandy.
right.
They have they built. Well, we showed it on one of the shows. They built the Lookout, which
Yeah.
is this little unit right here. This is
Wait.
basically
Hold on. That's cool, but let me show mine because it's got some really sweet custom branding on it. So
Mine didn't, and so I just have the Scandy logo. Yours actually has the Torch logo on it.
but they were flipping the front facing IR camera to get.
So now what they've done is they've actually rebuilt their Scandy Pro app so that it takes advantage of the new crazy lidar camera on the new iPad 2020 Actually, that's a question for you, Matt. LiDAR in this form factor, is that actually LiDAR, or is that something else?
It is technically LiDAR.
Okay. in the marketing, right?
Yeah, it is LiDAR. Most people, when they have referred to LiDAR, it's like the sort of spinning things on cars, that
spinning mirrors.
the Velodyne type of stuff, much more higher power. So, yeah, it's definitely a LiDAR camera. It's a bit like SLAM as a term, in that to really, you can say it's LiDAR, you can say it's SLAM, but to really understand what the thing is, you need to go in and look at the actual components and how those components are working. What type of, is it time of flight, structured light? Is there some other technique being used to get the sensor reading off? Like, it's just, I don't know. But from a marketing point of view, it's legit to call it a LiDAR.
It is legit to call it LiDAR. Okay, all right.
Well, 6D. Was there? It seemed like there was, like, the big goal of 6D was obviously around persistence and this layer of the thing, but there was also these tangential capabilities like scanning and meshing and like, did you find that was a hard thing to try to explain? Like, did people just think of you as just like, oh, I can scan a room a la Displayland, versus not, versus understanding, oh, I can persistently leave this content in the room?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of our biggest strengths and one of our biggest weaknesses at the same time, which was that we had incredibly sophisticated technology that technologists in the world recognized. And that was this ability, this pipeline we had of being able to get a 3D reconstruction, out of a phone, and so that was a really huge asset that we had. The weakness we had was that we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what is our go-to-market. What exactly is our product that to get that product market fit. We learned that we had there were like developers who understood 3D and AR, and then there were product managers who had a need for AR and a budget. And those two Venn diagrams did not intersect. There was just no overlap there. So figuring out, like, how do we get something that a product manager can use and pay for that didn't need to go through developer community that had no money to actually build the prototype. So those type of things were really hard. We got pulled into, we do real-time photogrammetry, or we do persistence and localization in large areas or small areas. We can do meshing and occlusion. And so these various kind of ways to apply the technology we just did so many iterations on that to find exactly where the market was for this stuff. And it kind of was a big factor in our decision to sell the company, rather than go all in on like revenue or all in on fundraising. And we felt that the risks in the market, like the market was kind of slow to emerge, and that if we had raised some money, and it wasn't like, it would have been on like it was a challenging fundraise, but we would have got it done. The risk of like 18 months from now ending up in a position where no one's still really sure what the market is, and yet Facebook and Apple and Google have sunk another $1 billion into this space. That was like, we felt like there was more downside likelihood than upside likelihood for us. So sort of weighing all of that up was a really difficult decision. And I think it was, thanks to the strength of this asset that we had around our technology, and I guess, the fact that we've done a pretty good job of being known for this technology, we were able to pretty, have some great conversations with pretty much every major player in the space, and eventually, find a home with Niantic. So yeah, it was a really tough one. That question of where is the market, and what product is the product that's going to take advantage of the technology we built.
Yeah, so I think that kind of relates to a question that came up in the chat from Patrick McCrory about the iPad with LiDAR. I mean, so first of all, when the iPad LiDAR announcement was made a few weeks ago, we did talk a lot about it in the show, but mostly from the perspective of, man, I kind of thought we would have actual active depth sensors on a lot more devices by now. But also we did talk about, from the only thing we talked about, like, what does it really mean, was from our point of view, it means a better user experience. In that, Spencer, it'd be good to hear actually, like, our speculation is that it localizes very quick. And so you don't have people waving their device around quite as much to get initialized and to finally get into the experience, whatever that might be. It's like, I guess it's a two-part question. Spencer, have you noticed the performance of ARKit improved by LiDAR? And then back to Patrick's question for Matt, which was like, if assuming iPhone 12 has something like this on it, does that move the market anywhere? So I
think that the it's hard to really make a judgment call between like this iPad and that iPad. They're different hardware, right? There's a new processor.
We're also very well trained to get localized as fast as, like, I know, it's funny, you can tell somebody knows what they're doing, how fast you can get localized.
They go like this. Yeah.
Or you do a little scan,
yeah,
you never pivot on a stationary axis.
So, no idea about ARKit and how much more efficient that is from last time. But as far as the hardware goes, I'm stunned at how far out this thing goes. Like, with using photogrammetry, which is what I'm assuming ARKit is using for feature detection. No, not feature detection, but for flat tabletops and floors and stuff like that, right? Like for planar detection. It's using photogrammetry.
I wouldn't call it photogrammetry myself, but we might be getting into some
into the details. Yeah.
But like,
well, Matt, I
wouldn't call it photogrammetry, but it is a 3D reconstruction, and then extracting a mesh from that 3D reconstruction.
So it's using SLAM and it's using feature points, right?
Yep. It's using feature points to sort of figure out the planes.
And then there's a plane there, and generally planes are horizontal, and so I'm gonna go ahead and I found a bunch of points that kind of looked like they're the same place from the camera. But there's no active there's no active IR or anything like that.
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I'm kind of we're guessing a little bit, but we saw a huge improvement in ARKit, like tracking and everything, from the iPhone 11 to the X to the 11. And I suspect that any improvements in the new iPad are due from a better camera system and a faster CPU and GPU rather than the LiDAR sensor. So
Right.
yeah, I'm kind of guessing a little bit, but
Well, and
that's kind of
it's certainly going to do better in lower light, like conditions where a camera might not provide the cleanest.
Well, right,
data.
like Cole from Scandy just sent me a video of him doing his current Corona hideout in Texas, and some of the rooms that he went through were completely dark, absolutely black.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
and he was scanning the hell out of them, and they were just like they were coming up fine.
It's sort of cool.
You know?
We could circle that back to the privacy conversation, but so I guess so the other thing so the thing we talked about when it was announced was from my perspective, like, because I mostly focus on the product and the user experience side and the end user side. It's not really something it's not propagated out enough to where I can rely on that hardware being available. So I guess to kind of short circuit that conversation and back to Patrick's question, like assuming just all some greater percentage than 75% of the active devices on the market have some sort of active depth sensing. They have this capability. Does that move the needle as far as the market goes? Does it really unlock anything?
Yeah, it definitely unlocks a bit. It's a bit like, it'll be like what ARKit did for, just regular AR, like just the fact that it now is, and it's high quality and it's simple. The sensor, I mean, we've known about Apple sensor for 2 years, I think, when we first sort of got a sense of what it was going to be. And the difference, like really, if you look at the whole pipeline of going from raw depth data through to here's a nice photogrammetry, textured, reconstructed, cleaned up, segmented, model. The very first step of getting that raw data is just like one step of about 10 in that pipeline, and all the rest are software. So what it does do, though, is it means that source data is clean and higher quality, and the user, it's more idiot proof for the user.
Right.
So we still need to see, definitely our pipeline for the reconstruction was state of the art, like in the academic sense, not marketing sense. So I think it'll be another year or two before the big companies come to the same quality of a software pipeline. And we'll see the sensor data cleaner, and we'll start to see these 3D models being just a high quality, super photorealistic 3D models are going to be there. But there's still that question, again, that we really, the problem we understood at 6D, even 15 feet is great, but that's not even the other side of the street.
Right.
How do you get
okay,
how do you get
so,
like 100 people like crowdsourcing a model and stitching that together? That was the problem.
Yeah.
So I have a question about this. So we have GPS within 3 meters. I think
that's military GPS. I think consumer GPS is even like 10 meters. Like it's
so
pretty
it's 30 feet.
It's pretty wide. Yeah.
We get you in the basic area, right?
You roll the dice.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So here I am standing 30 meters away from my front door, and what I really want is I want a nicely modeled obstruction mesh for this thing that's going to happen in my house, and I also want my friends to be able to see that too. So here I have this, like I'm somewhere within 30 meters of this very specific point. Wouldn't it be possible to take, I'm assuming that Google, when they do their Street View, they're taking LiDAR, take that LiDAR, take those photographs and match them up to then people playing Pokemon Go in my neighborhood. And now I know exactly where my front door is within millimeters. I know where at least centimeters. I know where my front door is. Now, once I know where my front door is, then how do I then extrapolate private data from that public front door, right? So you have the public front door data where I know how far away that front door is from the street. But then there's the private data on the inside, which is I know how far my bathroom is from the front door.
Yeah.
Is that's something we need to think about, right?
That gets into the hard technology problems. I mean, just getting the VPS capability to visually position yourself. Like GPS gets you roughly right, and then some sort of visual system refines that right down to centimeters. And once you got that, and then once you've got the model space, you somehow need to know, maybe it's an apartment block, and you need to know not only what's behind the front door, but you need to know like which one's your front door versus your neighbor's front door.
Oh my God! So you've got like a secondary public-private space.
It's even worse. What if it's your living room, which you're kind of okay for your friends to see, but your kid's bedroom, which you don't want anyone to see inside the house? And how do you know when the bedroom ends and the living room begins, and those sort of questions? No one.
This is why we don't want this stuff to instantly blow up. I mean, like we need time to process the implications here. And I do think that's what's going to happen. I think it kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier. This spirals really. Anytime you talk about these, especially with knowledgeable people about what is possible and what's going to be possible, the more you start thinking into the future, you're like, wait a minute. But what I know companies do now with my data, what are they going to do with that? And I unfortunately, your average consumer is not going to have an opinion on it until they actually see the thing implemented. By then it's too late. Because if
it's already happening.
Most consumers don't even know what social media is doing with their data still, so that is the very, call it AR cloud, mirror world or whatever. But that is a very deep, dark, that is the abyss of the conversation, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be that bad. I think if you try and solve these issues with algorithms, you're just screwed, because it's an impossibly fractal problem. We sort of came up with a bunch of, I would call them solution hypotheses, that seem to make a lot of sense around just some principles, like if you scan it, you own it. If you come and scan my house and put that on your server, then you actually have a scan of my house that, Paul, you own, but it may not the official scan of my house that I own, or the one that sits on the public council records, of my house.
So just like photographs. Like I come to your house.
Exactly like photographs.
And I take a picture of you and Paul, and we're hanging out, and we have beers, and I take a picture.
And then I stop you and I say, what are you going to do with that photo? Do I have rights to that photo?
You need to sign this release. Yeah.
Oh, See, and that just makes us assholes. We're all a bunch of assholes there.
It's going to be exactly like that.
Hold on, I didn't give you permission. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty nuts. It's pretty crazy. So I want to be conscientious of time. We always run over, but I mean, this has been incredible. First of all, no offense. We have loved.
I just want to comment on Eric's question.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Yeah, here you go.
Yeah, I turned 49 this year, so thank you, Eric. You're a fan for that.
Devilish. I should have introduced you as the devilishly handsome Matt Miesnieks. Yeah. By the way, no offense to prior guests, because we have a few in the chat and we love you all, but Matt has really one-upped the background view game for future guests.
Dude, I gotta say, Matt, I have been trying to turn off
the exposure.
yeah, me too. I haven't figured out how to do that.
I think I got 16 more follows just from being here.
Yeah. So I had to swing my whole desk around, because it was looking illustrated it. I had bed in the bathroom. I was like, I stuck to that.
Yeah, that is not a virtual background in your view.
No,
Also,
that's
one more
the
thing I do before we leave, I need to point out that I
Yes,
have this shirt
designers do
here.
not appreciate that shirt. That's
right.
not. It's not cool.
It's in
I don't
Comic
get it.
Sans. It's
I don't
funny.
get it. Yeah.
You know, we really we didn't plug the show at all, but you know, I loved, as always, I love seeing all the familiar and new names in the chat. The questions have been really great. They really help drive the conversation. I would say if you follow us on our Discord, you can get there by going to chat.xrtalk.net. I am going to reveal what I believe, if they're not next week's guest, they're going to be within the next 2 weeks, and it's another showstopper guest like we've had today. So if you join our Discord, I'll let everybody know there what it is, mostly because it's not confirmed yet.
Yeah.
And then if you want
And
to,
then the one after that is also cool.
yeah, they're all cool. Yeah, we're actually trying to line up guests, and by Matt kind of did this on short notice, and so thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been on the. I remember when we first drew up the show notes for episode 2 or 3. Literally in the topics, Spencer and you and I had been talking, and I knew that you were potentially working on this deal with could have been Niantic, and Spencer had a big bullet point that's like, "What's 6D up to these days?" And I was like, let's just wait until we can actually have Matt on to talk about it. And so here we are. So like, I mean, it was really cool to get you like to get. Hopefully, you know, everyone got to learn something from it. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I don't know. So like as far as your current situation, you're currently, I mean, you're advising Niantic to some degree, but you haven't fully. You're still kind of just taking it all in and figuring out what's next, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was obviously intense period of just trying to figure out the future of 6D over the last 9 months. And going through a sale process is incredibly stressful, especially when we agreed terms, we signed a term sheet, and then day by day we just started seeing this coronavirus thing just build. It was late, sort of mid-February, something we agreed all the terms, and so I joked with my investors. I said I felt like Indiana Jones in
The
that
boulder
first movie where. I'd go, and I'm like, now this coronavirus boulder is like just rolling towards me, like jumping over snake pits and sliding into doors and things, trying to get it done. But yes, so in terms of where I personally ended up is, I'm advising Niantic, and I'm really impressed with John Hankey, the CEO. Just getting to know the whole team, and they have just an exciting vision for really. It was just incredibly aligned with our vision at 6D, both in terms of potential and that objective of being like an independent player, an independent platform that developers could trust, a pure play in AR. They had scale, they had a ton of cash in the bank, and really values driven company, which we loved as well. And so it was a pretty, it was just we're all very, very happy that for me, talking about a whole bunch of ideas with John and the team about, ways I might be able to help them, as well as, just chatting with anybody interesting at any other ideas that are up there and just exploring the space. So it's, we're very, very lucky on the timing. That was just incredibly, that was luck. Very pleased.
It was luck, but I mean, it couldn't have happened to a more deserving person and team. Your team was incredible, and I mean, you've been really committed to this space for so long. So like, I'm super. I've told you personally, I'm super happy for you, and you're living proof that there is a lot of longevity in this industry. I think in a lot of ways we're just getting started, and I think a lot of people, I mean, a lot of our audience in particular, they're just starting their career in this, and here you are, you know, you're already 10 years in, and you know, there are successful pathways through this, so it's super inspiring. And I definitely recommend everyone follow Matt online. He shares a lot of interesting stuff, and we're super excited to hear what happens next. And what's
I have one more question for Matt.
uh
Do
oh
you remember? No, do you remember back? Yeah, right. This is the gotcha. This is where we get you, man. No,
yeah. How many glasses of wine is that? Is it two?
Yeah. I'll tell you anything. I love you guys.
No, this is okay. Back when the first iPhone came out, and maybe the second iPhone, there was some madman who made a Darth Vader running around in AR on a tabletop. Do you remember this? This is like
Oh yeah. That was PTAM. That was George Klein, I think, and Gerhard was in the video, I think, as well. That was the original.
Good
slam
Lord,
on
that was just mind blowing. I was like, okay, that was the thing that got me into this entire thing, was just seeing that and going, holy crap, we can do this. I mean, I've been in video games for years, but I'd never seen that and on the phone.
We'll have to try to find that video.
When I was, if you search for this PTAM, you know, and it'll, it's on YouTube. That was kind of what got me thinking about leaving Layer and starting Deco, you know, to really build upon that concept. And then realize, you need more than just a ground plane. You actually need like a 3D geometry now to get that working. And then there is, you need a whole freaking map of the world, and then you need to be able to share that.
We had conversations. I know that we're wrapping it up here, but I just want to get this out of my head. We had conversations with a guy in San Francisco who does what's the rabbit game where it's super violent and it's rabbits, and it's they were really
friends.
No. That's really good. No,
I forgot about that.
No, this is a he basically does an algorithmically controlled animation system, and I was trying to get him on board.
Oh, I know. He was doing a physics-driven animation system, and he had a bunch of Gamma Sutra articles and GDC presentations.
and they were so good. And what we need and what we still don't have is a character who is able to understand how to run across a plane and then jump up to a certain point that is defined by the geometry reconstruction, and then stand on it, and then run across that space, and then jump to the next thing. Right? We need that kind of like code driven, and it needs to be a combination. Right, because it has to be a combination of art where the flourishes and how do you land and stuff, and also the understanding of where that surface is.
That's what the Mars team at Unity, Timone's group, has been working on. And the thing about it, we've talked about it a few times in the show, like it's one of those things where if you know that is a solution, if you know that is a problem that needs to be solved, their solution is trying to address that, but you have to be in that. You have to be in the headspace that you just described, which is I am trying to solve this. I'm trying to solve content responsive to the physical world for an arbitrary number of environments, and the solution to that, like their take on the solution is you set up a queryable environment. And then you set up these like fuzzy parameters for the content to say, if there is a surface this big and on this orientation, I want
I can go there. I don't want that.
What you're talking about. But the problem is to describe the how complex it is to describe what you're talking in a reliable way. like even the solution is complex. And so like,
Matt's technology. Hold on, Matt's
I
technology.
need to step out for
yeah,
one
go
sec.
ahead.
Okay, yeah. No, Paul already did. I
What?
covered
Don't
for you.
tell on me.
You go ahead.
This episode brought to you by Stadium, buddy.
So the mesh that Matt's and others are creating from the environmental geometry can be used as a physics boundary, and you can use you can use those boundaries to connect your animation to the surface. Like it's possible. It may not be fast right now, and maybe
yeah, but I'm saying like, well, so what you're saying is like, maybe we're talking past each other a little bit, because like I think what you're saying is basically, could I use an environmental mesh to drive like IK for a character?
Right. Yeah.
And
exactly.
what I'm saying is like, but you'll always want to push that further, and you're saying, well, if I detect there are stairs in the room, I want the character to run up those stairs using
Yes.
IK. But how do you build an experience made for more than one environment where you say, well, if someone happens to be in a room with stairs, use the stairs. This goes back to the fragments conversation and the couch and all that. And what I'm saying is like how the fragments team solved that is they said, very specifically, if there's a couch in the room, have the character go sit on the couch. If we don't, there may be a couch in the room, but if we don't detect it, just don't do that. It's very hard coded. And then like, so then
Right.
you're like, well, no, I want it to be dynamically responsive. I want it to be like,
I want you to be in a ball pit
if there's a
or
chair
outside,
if there's a
or
chair,
whatever. Yeah.
I want them to sit in a chair or a couch. Or if there's neither one of those,
It doesn't matter. I don't care about
Okay.
the specification of the sitting object. It can be a stump. It can be a higher level of ground. Whatever. It to me, what's important is for the IK to reliably interact with the environmental geometry, and it seems to me that is a very difficult problem, yet probably not unsolvable. That you have an environmental geometry that you've created with lidar or Matt's thing or whatever, but you have a surface, and that surface is defined, and so then you can use IK to move across that surface, and
yeah,
that's what I want.
I know, but like my other point is that you want that because you have iterated to the point of knowing that you could do more with that capability. And like, there's just so many people like you can't,
Okay. All right. Yeah.
like you can't sit back and think through like, this is going to be something everyone would need. Like, people have to discover that on their own. Like, there's a ton of stuff that we're like, oh my God, we wish we could have that so many people are like, I don't even get
why would you ever need that?
Yeah.
Right.
But we're in that headspace, I mean, that is the challenge of this entire market. Like, I mean, like we're talking about magically people now kind of going out into the world and working on other problems. And like, I think one of the things I had to deal with, I think a lot of us had to deal with, is you get used to working with people in the same headspace as you, and then you go into a different environment and they don't even know what's possible. Like, and you're already thinking past
Right.
that. You're like, no, sure, we can do that. But we want to make this cool, or we want to make this useful. And
Right. And
there's
like, look,
definitely a gap.
there's a bunny on the table.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
which is something, I want, I always want to acknowledge the people that do like follow us and participate in these conversations, because they're trying to grow their career and their knowledge. And quite frankly, the most powerful thing you can do is just prototype and try small ideas. And because
Agreed.
I guarantee you, like to your credit, you bring this up all the time. Start with a cube and just do like a really fun, compelling thing with a cube. And I guarantee just that little exercise of put a cube on a table first of
Well,
all, because the
and I'm
tools
I'm
would be a
gonna
lot
I'm
of
gonna
work.
give that back to you, Paul, because one of the
No.
things that you've done for me in my career and my understanding of how code works and stuff is that you built me floaty spinny. You built me these little. Paul built me a little piece of code.
Welcome back to the
I think when
Love Fest,
when we
Matt.
were when we were working on
Hey, thank you.
we were working on the Wyden thing,
Paranorman.
Paranorman, 2-bit bub, and Paul built me this little tiny piece of code that would allow me to float something or move it around like this, and that ability to then, without having to go in and switch my brain into left side and just keep it in right side, and do my art and be able to use that. So I guess I'm saying that yes, the
I mean, I'm not going to
there is
stop you. Keep telling me how
there's
wonderful I am.
you're amazing, Paul. Oh my God. But you know the it is it's a weird world that we're building. And a lot of people don't understand it, like you were saying, to your point.
Most
You
people
know,
don't understand it.
right, and it's this interesting place that we are right now, where we explain it and we get excited about it, and we can't go too far because then we leave people behind, or we can't get, it's like, so we have to kind of like usher people with us.
Well, no, or the other part of that, like, because we've talked about this before too, but like we know what's possible realistically and practically speaking, and we know what we want to be able to do once the technology enables it or the pieces are in place. But then there's a lot of people that just, they don't even know the most rudimentary thing is even possible at all. But there is this interesting like gap of your average person will assume a lot of this really hard stuff is easy, right? Like, I mean,
because they saw Iron Man.
Well, right. Well, like, yeah. Well, I mean, like, Matt, like, like we had an episode where we did talk a lot about persistence, and it was like, when you do get someone over the mental hump of, oh yeah, you can put virtual content in my real world, whether I see it through my phone or my glasses or whatever, but it's positionally anchored, it's environmentally aware. And so once you can get someone to like kind of grok that, then they just assume that everyone can see that same piece of content from their independent devices, and you can leave it there persistently and I can come back to it. Like, so on one hand, it's like we're pressing on like the tech because we want to build the best experience or the most valuable experience possible. And we know what it's going to take to get there. And a lot of people also just assume that's already a way solved problem. And it's very much not.
Yeah. No, it's still a ways to go.
Have you had did you have have you had like ridiculous 6D conversations where somebody just assumed you could do astronomically difficult things? Like it was just like
the one that always was so hard to set expectations around was like the idea of photorealism. Like what does that mean? Like how we can do a scan and it's like we got colors and so it's like photorealistic. Well, what are you realistic? I don't know what I mean by photorealistic. And how good is good and how good is high quality versus medium quality, and so that was one that we just always like we were so like cautious about getting into photogrammetry because our value was really we could do it all on real time on the phone, like emerge. But the user experience was robust. You could just do whatever you want from the user motion and still get something that you see emerge in real time. It meant like compromising on a bunch of the visual fidelity, and everyone just expected it would just look like perfect. That was
and there's also the question of what is the size of your viewing device, right? Like, is your device 720 wide or is it 1980 wide, right? Yep. Like what's the what's the resolution of the display device, so that impacts what your your resolution of your texture maps and polygons and everything is.
Yep. Well, So that was just one of those ones where just people's assumptions were just so far detached from the reality of even though we were doing like mind-blowing tech.
Right.
Like, come on.
The tech, though, just like, how the hell are you even in?
Yeah, that's kind of the we are that is the torture. I don't know we'll ever get out of that, where you break ground and you're really proud, and like it's both the beauty and the curse of working on the product side, where you hand someone something that you've poured a lot into and everything you've overcome, and they just so efficiently slice right to the shortcoming and say, "Oh, well, if it could only just do this," and you're like,
why is it jaggy? It's jaggy like that.
Why isn't this just smoother, Matt? Why is this just not like? Well, how come the mirrors and reflective surfaces aren't just like shiny already?
How come your photogrammetry people all have Voldemort noses? You know.
Well, I mean, but it's all true. Like, I mean, back to your point, Matt. You could optimize for reconstructing a person and do better nose reconstruction, but how big is the market for for
that? We could have got a lot smaller voxels and a lot higher fidelity, but we would have required users to move much slower so that you could more time to process each spot, and we would have had a much shorter range that the device picked up. And so you end up saying, well, we can scan your foot, we can scan your face, but you can't scan a room, unless you're going to go like on your hands and knees around.
Okay, so Matt, I have a story about you. We've never met before, but actually about 6D.ai. And Paul and Torch were playing around with the tech for a while, and they were doing things, and I kept seeing the play ball, the McDonald's ball pit thing. And I never did it, and I feel really bad that I never did it. But I really wanted to go in with a GoPro strapped to my head, and have like a whole T-shirt full of those balls, and just start throwing them at Paul.
Like, look at, I got access to the 6D like beta, and like, oh my god, look at first of all, the balls look super realistic.
So realistic. Physics is perfect.
Actually, that's a good. Okay, we should do like we have in the past really slammed the After Effects AR videos, because they're just like we all have that problem where they set unrealistic expectations. We should totally recreate AR demos with practical effects.
Well, like, remember that you should look up that Sony Vio ad that they did in San Francisco, the song.
Oh yeah, they dropped like on down the street
and like tipped them, and they bounced.
Oh yeah,
that was like our inspiration. Yeah, we looked at that for our ball pit after. Said, that's what we want.
Really,
we want to get to that. Yeah. It was,
I always wondered, like, because like when 6D first kind of showed their, especially because in our Twitter, we're in the filter bubble, right? We're in like everybody was posting videos of like chucking balls in their yard or their room, like off that.
Right.
It's the hello world of like, once you get a mesh, like that's hello world. Is like throw a ball at the net.
So we've gone way over. Thanks so much for being generous with your time, and a part of it is because I disappeared in the middle of the show. I'll admit it, which is normally why we end the show earlier than we want.
And I'm about to disappear in the middle of the show too.
Okay, well then listen the show before Spencer disappears.
Okay.
Thanks.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was great. It was really a great show. Like this amazing brains, all of you.
Just no. It's you guys.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've definitely all had enough alcohol for the night. We're all hugs and everything. So, and thanks again to we'll just, Estella coined it. We're going to keep calling the Peanut Gallery until they come up with another name themselves. But it was a great chat. I love seeing a bunch of the New Zealand and Magic Leap folks in there. Yeah. So we do this every week. We try to do it on Wednesdays. We made
Kiora, mate.
yeah, Kiora.
Yeah.
And I'll be careful because we have an Aussie in the show and the Kiwis in the chat. It's a whole thing. But yeah, like if you want to subscribe, you'll get notifications. So if you just go to watch.xrtalk.net, if you're still here and watching, you can get to our channel. We try to do it every week. I do think we've got some pretty incredible guests lined up. Eventually, it actually the peanut gallery is talking about floaty spinning because Spencer brings it up every other episode. We should do like a code walkthrough of floaty spinning on one of them.
Floaty spinning is amazing.
It's literally a 20-line code file.
It's amazing.
But yeah, it's really funny that we talk about it so much. So yeah, thanks so much. And we'll get the show notes updated with some links and things we talked about. I'll definitely have the 2013 interview with Matt, which I think is really fun to watch. Well, I'll try to find that Darth Vader PTAM video. I'm sure I can get that.
Yeah, and throw down the Scandi video that I got on there too. Yeah.
Yep, cool. So thanks so much, guys. It's another good one. I'm going to sign off.